Hey everyone, this is Robert, and thank you for tuning in to Station Square. And as we are still, um, first off, to anybody who celebrated, Memorial Day and pretty much everything that you've done this past weekend, hope it was nice. It was, you know, guess restful or whatever you decided to. I don't know. Everybody's totally like whether you're working or you're resting. Like I hope it was a good one, but now it's time to get back to work. Yeah. Hey, so today we're gonna be chatting with somebody who's been in the business for a while. She's sitting to on my left, I guess my left. Ladies and gentlemen, Maria Pendolino. I really hope I got it right.
You did. You did. It's a nice long Italian last name. You got it right.
Yeah, so Maria, thank you for joining us on for this afternoon, for this lovely Wednesday afternoon, or
Yeah, thank you
whichever
for
time
having
zone
me.
anybody else is in. But yeah, thank you so much.
I'm so glad to be here with you.
Yeah, totally. Let's see. I guess you could. I usually start off with the icebreaker stuff, what you've done, what have you been working on as of late, just to get to know you a little more and how long you've been at this. So it's pretty much just the introduction, if you may.
Yeah, sure. So I've been acting since I was 11 years old. I started working in community theater and musical theater and did some of that in college. And then I moved to New York City to pursue a career of being an actor. I was working in theater, TV, and film. And then I started to dabble in commercials. And that's how I actually got my start in voiceover. So I was looking for something that I could maybe do in between different contracts that I had booked. Like, oh, if I booked a TV show and I was going to be working on that for a week, maybe I could fit in a voiceover job because a lot of times commercials move kind of quickly. So they cast, record, right away. So I could squeeze that in between other jobs. Um, and then I found out that I really, really liked it. I just enjoyed working behind the microphone. I enjoyed being in the booth. From commercials, I branched out to doing things like narrations, educational voiceover, documentaries, phone systems. And then I started to dabble in some of the character work like animation and video games. And now it's been almost 14 years that I've been in the business and doing voiceover as my kind of primary acting pursuit. I have a few commercials running right now for Geico and for Xfinity cable television and phone. I'm the voice of a game that's going to be coming out soon. It's called the Prim Adventure Game. They released their demo last year, and hopefully we'll be going into the booth to record some new material for the game soon. So that's a point and click adventure game, and the art style is very similar to like Tim Burton or like Coraline. So it's kind of cute, creepy, I guess is a good way to describe it. And yeah, another thing that I've been working on this year with some of my other voice actor friends is the launch of the Disabled Voice Actors Database, which hopes to provide casting directors, producers, and directors with a database and list of talents with different disabilities so that when they're looking for instance, a maybe they have an animation character that's in a wheelchair and they want that actor to be portraying that who also has that same kind of similar disability. We're providing that list so it's easy for people to find folks who can authentically tell those stories. So that's what I've been up to. Not busy at all.
Oh no, no, no. I mean, it's not like no, I'm totally not busy. I mean, excuse me. I mean, you could do a podcast, and you can also manage a bunch of different scripts, and then still have to do auditions every now and then. And totally not busy in the process of looking for like another day job or anything. Yeah, totally not taking up a lot of my time or just playing video games. Huh? Nope, not
No,
busy.
definitely not.
But in all seriousness, though, it's like balancing in between all this, the amount of work that you're doing is yeah. I mean, it's good that you've been staying productive and busy. Like, that's just something that I'm slowly but surely I'm starting to get back into the groove because, like I mentioned before, my we actually started recording. I just got back from a little mini vacay, so I'm just starting to like, get adjusted to the whole like, okay, so now that I've had my, fun and whatnot, it's time to, get back to the daily grinder or hustle or whatever, what have you. So it's kind of like, yeah, time to get back to the groove of things, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I guess for you personally, like when it comes to like if you're working on so many different projects all at once, like how do you balance all of this? Like out of
Yeah.
curiosity.
It's not easy. I mean, I think number
Yeah,
one, the most important thing is being organized. So I basically
yeah.
run my voiceover business out of my email inbox. So I keep that really organized and keep auditions, projects that I'm currently working on, all of that. I kind of keep that in my inbox. I use my Google Calendar to schedule sessions. So if I'm doing live directed sessions with a team, I have all of that kind of stuff on my calendar, and then I block out extra time on my calendar. Like if I have an animation audition come in and I know I want to spend some time, researching the show, creating the character, all of that, I'll block some time off on my calendar as if it was a job so that I really have time to focus on it and sink my teeth into it. I've learned how to delegate, which is really hard for someone like me who is a control freak and a very type A kind of person. But I have a virtual assistant who works for me full time. So she helps me with things like my billing and some of the admin things related to my business. She helps me follow up with people who haven't paid their invoices on time. So being able to delegate some tasks to open up my time so that I can focus on doing things to grow my business and perform better so that I have time to do coaching sessions and improve my craft and work on all of the different things that I want to have in my voiceover arsenal. That helps me be, a better, stronger talent versus like sending invoices, which of course is important when it comes to running a business. But that doesn't actually help me be a better voice talent. So learning to delegate and having people doing things for me and my business is a big part of how I kind of stay organized and attack the day.
Yeah, right on. Um, I guess my next question is, so you were born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and then you started at 11, at the age of 11, and then, you started doing the theater stuff. Like, I actually find it's really fascinating that you were in Sound of Music, Phantom, Les Miserables, kind of like a lot of the big musicals that you've done over the years. So I'm just kind of curious about how, how it was like growing up in New York and getting to participate in the local community theater productions
Yeah, I had
out
a
of the
lot of
East
fun doing
Coast.
that.
Yeah.
I auditioned for a lot of different productions and kind of got my parents to like drive me around all over Buffalo to go to different auditions and to perform. And that kind of just created, the very earliest performance experiences for me. I just really loved, at that time in my life, I just really loved Broadway. And this is, in a pre-internet time. So, you would get little snippets of things on television, or you could rent DVDs or buy videos, VHS videos and things like that of different productions. You didn't have, YouTube at your fingertips to look up, clips from productions in New York City or around the country. So you kind of had to create some of that, I think, for yourself. But yeah, theater was a big part of, how I became a working actor, how I became a full-time working actor. It was kind of my entry into things. I think I was looking at my resume the other day. I think I've been in like over 35 like plays and musicals. But now it honestly that feels like almost like another life because I spend almost every day now in my booth here doing, voiceover and not pursuing so much of like the stage and the TV and film. And there's a lot less makeup involved. And, when you're working on TV and film, sometimes you're on set for like 18 hours. You get picked up at like 3 or 4 in the morning for hair and makeup, and then you're there, even if you're only working for a small part of that. So voiceover definitely offers a better quality of life in that, I just walk into the booth, I do my work, and then I leave the booth. So it's just kind of like it's a different way to be an actor, but that theater training at the beginning, I think, was really what set me up to be a a strong working actor with a good work ethic, with good vocal technique, voice training, vocal health. It's one thing to sing 8 shows a week and have the vocal strength and agility to do that. So I think that training definitely serves me really well in voiceover, even if I'm not, singing 8 shows a week anymore in my booth.
Oh yeah. Um, and I was also gonna ask you, like, um, because being in the New York theater community is kind of like, when you say you want to be on Broadway, that's like, go to New York because I know that you were kind of like already in the area, so it was kind of like, oh, you know what? Let's just give this a shot. Like, you know, full steam ahead
Yeah,
with all these productions.
New York City is definitely like a commitment. Like it is
Yeah.
hard to live there. It is expensive. It's not particularly easy to get around. You physically go to auditions, and even before COVID, you physically had to go to voiceover auditions. So now we live in a world where we can do our auditions at home, and we're just sending in our MP3s to, your agents, your managers, or casting directors, or people reaching out to you. You can record it at home, send it in. Prior to 2020, most of the big jobs in New York, whether it was animation or video games or dubbing or commercials, a lot of that required you to physically go to a casting director's office or studio to audition. So you're talking about, potentially a 3 hour time commitment to do what, a 15-second commercial audition? The time it takes you on the subway to get to the studio, you wait your turn, you do the audition, you go back. When I think about that today, gosh, I do 20 auditions in one day. And the thought of having to allot 3 hours for every audition to get there and back, it's kind of a different world. But yeah, I mean, the years in New York, if that was my training ground, if that was my time in the trenches, it definitely served me well. But Buffalo is definitely a much easier way of life. I really like living here. I grew up here. Easier to get around, and definitely cheaper.
Yeah. Was acting always something that you wanted to do at a young age?
Yeah, it was pretty much from a young age that it was something that I really enjoy doing. Kind of had the flair for the dramatic and wanted to perform. I'm not sure that I I'm not sure that I knew at that young age of what being a working actor really meant. I think at that time I probably thought that I would have a day job, and then I would do acting pursuits on the side. Just because I never when I was dreaming of being an actor and wanting to perform, for me it was never about being famous. Like it wasn't about like trying to go to Hollywood and being a celebrity. I just really wanted to perform. So I'm not sure that I realized that there were like not famous working actors who made a living from acting but were not like household names. So I think I probably at that time thought like, oh, I'll have to be a teacher or a real estate agent or an insurance agent or something as like the main way that I make my money, and then I'll find like acting jobs here or there. I didn't realize that it was possible to be a non-famous working actor who could support themselves, and that is a really cool place to be.
Yeah. So with all of this acting that you've had, like with all the training that you had, like when did you actually make the transition? I mean, you might have mentioned it a little bit earlier, but was it one of those cases where you kind of, um, based on the experience that you've had, like was it a case of somebody being like, "Hey, there's this audition for you, maybe you should do VO," or how did it, like it pan out? Like, was it a case of like somebody discovered you, or did you kind of start going at your own
Yeah,
leisure, so to
it
speak?
was it was a little bit of both. So, someone mentioned voiceover to me as a way to supplement my income as an actor, just as another way to use your acting training and use your voice. So I took a class at a place in New York called Actors Connection. So they run classes with casting directors, with producers, and I took a class with a commercial voiceover casting director in New York, and I really liked the class. And I went up to her afterwards and I was like, hey, if I was like serious about pursuing voiceover, like what would you recommend? And she happened to be teaching like a 4 week class pretty soon after that one night class and was like, oh, you could take this 4 week class and we go over, the difference between television commercials, radio commercials, doing commercials that are like a partner read, like maybe you hear a radio commercial that has like a husband and a wife like talking back and forth. So I went to her 4 week class. And then after that 4 week class, she started to call me in to audition for things that she was casting, even though I didn't have an agent yet. So she was really the one who got me started on my path of like being able to audition for professional level work. And then after I had, had a little bit of success on the things that she called me in for, she actually introduced me to a couple of agents, and that's kind of how my career took off. So it wasn't being discovered per se, but I definitely had like a mentor or a champion who kind of like guided me on the way to get started, and that was really, really helpful.
Yeah, so you've been doing spots for Geico, Xfinity, so many different clients over the years. So, um, I've asked this question from time to time, but what's your best piece of any tips or what's your best piece of advice on maintaining relationships, with your clients and just keeping, you know, in touch with them? Like any marketing or anything that you want to share
Mm-hmm.
to the audience out there?
Yeah,
Like as far
so
as
I
cultivating,
I
yeah.
yeah, I don't do a ton of marketing, but what I do is I try to keep a like active profile on both LinkedIn and Instagram, and I invite my clients to follow me or connect with me on those social media platforms. And I like to share like a slice of life. So sometimes I share like, here are things that I'm working on, but I also just share things about my regular life, like my cats, one of whom has just crawled into my lap here while we were talking, and the food that I like to cook. And during COVID, my husband and I bought an RV, so I've shared like pictures of us camping, and I think always like just showing that you're like a great human being is a great way to market to your clients and show them that you have like this 360-degree view. And it's not just voiceover, it's not just business, but you actually like have a personality and like have things that make you a whole person. And I've enjoyed getting to know my clients that way by following them on Instagram or LinkedIn and seeing more about their personal life or their success. I use MailChimp as kind of like my mailing list. And I basically use that to notify my clients when I'm going to be out of the office, because I'm traveling, or, if I'm going to be on vacation, or like when last year we were moving. So I took some days off to do that, moving from one house to the other. And I kind of use that like out of studio notification as a way to like add in additional like marketing things like, oh, and by the way, I also have a new demo, or, and by the way, you might have heard me on this commercial, and I'll link to that. So I kind of use, the good customer service of letting them know that I'm not going to be available the way that I usually am. I use that as the inroad to then share additional information. And I've gotten really nice feedback from my clients that like the amount of marketing I do is like just the right amount. Like I'm not annoying, I'm not sending things too frequently, but just like, a couple times a year, I let people know when I'm not going to be available, and I also give them a slice of like what I've been working on. That's kind of how I approach the cultivation.
Yeah, okay. So you mentioned the disabled voice actors database that launched last year. How's that going? And when did the whole like idea of it come to be?
Sure. So about 2 years ago now, I think Edward Hong, who's a voice actor in California, he launched the People of Global Majority voiceover database, which included voice actors who are all non-Caucasian identifying, to help studios and casting directors find more people of global majority to cast authentically in roles, which I think is really important. Then JP Carliak and his team launched the QueerVox database that included voice actors who identified as part of the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. Again, another really important resource. And then my voice acting colleague, Nick Germain, who's super active in the voice acting community on Twitter, he launched the first version of the Voice Actors with Disabilities database. And he started it as basically just an easy to use Google Doc. The problem was is that as it grew and grew, it was harder to use and harder to sort. For example, if one person listed their disability as autism, but another person listed their disability as ASD, which stands for autism spectrum disorder, you wouldn't necessarily see those two people in one search because they were using different terms. So I reached out to Nick and I said, hey, how would you feel about moving this from a Google Doc to something like Airtable, where we can make it a little bit more standardized so that it's easier for casting directors to use, so that when they're looking for someone who has a specific disability, they can easily search for that disability and find everyone who meets that qualification. So I reached out to Nick and I said, hey, can I help you with this? And he said yes. So we formed kind of a steering committee. We have about 6 disabled actors who kind of act as like the admin leadership. And we redid the intake form, sent it out to all of the actors on the original list, and then published it on social media that anybody who had a disability could apply for it. And we launched the database publicly to the casting director community in December. Now, here it is in May going into June. We have just over 550 actors who have registered to be in the database, and we're up to about 75 production companies, networks, studios, casting directors, advertising agencies who have requested to have access to the database to use for casting. So we're really pleased with the progress that we've made so far. It's listed at disabledvoiceactors.com. So if you are a disabled voice actor, you can fill out the intake form there. And if you're casting a project, you can request access to the database. The database is private and password protected, so we only give the access to people who have a legitimate need to use it.
It is amazing. Congrats on all the hard work that went into it so far and how it just pretty much evolved over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let me see. I guess I kind of also, since you kind of mentioned like, one of your cats, the floofs, I guess we could just talk a little bit about, your pet, if you
Yeah, for
like.
sure. So I have 4 rescue cats. They are all tuxedo coloring, so black and white. My husband and I met, and we each had one cat. So he adopted a cat named Two Scoops from a rescue in Nebraska. She's a black and white short hair tuxedo, and he said that when he got her, that she fit in his hands like 2 scoops of ice cream. So that's how she got her name. She is 14 years old and she's very sassy. And then I have a cat that I adopted. Her official name is Nellie Country Grammar, but we call her just Nellie. She's a kind of white and black splotchy cat. She's 13 years old. And then after we got married, we adopted another cat named full name Mozzarella Cheese, but we call her Motzi. She's a long hair black and white tuxedo. And then about a year and a half ago, we adopted a kitten from a rescue here in Buffalo called 10 Lives Club. And her name is Panini Sandwich, Panini for short. And she was the one who came in and infiltrated our conversation a few moments ago.
Mm. And I said I. Um, Let me see. And you were also on an episode of House Hunters, which I just found out like a few seconds ago.
Yeah, that
Or
was really interesting.
recently. Yeah.
When my husband and I were buying our previous house, so not the house that we live in now, but our previous house, I asked him if he would mind if we could apply for House Hunters because I love HGTV. I love the show. And I know that the kind of formula on the show is they always seem to be setting up the partners against each other. So, like, if the wife wants a new house, the husband wants an old house. If the one partner wants hardwood floors, the other partner wants tile. So, I know that they try to set up these conflicts in the show so that the two people are kind of looking for different things. So, when we submitted a video audition, I made sure that everything he said I disagreed with, and everything I said he disagreed with. So, we got cast on the show, and it was really interesting. It takes 5 full days to shoot the episode, which is crazy when you think about how the episode is only like 24 minutes long with commercials. But we did 3 house tours, and then they came and did interviews with us that are kind of shown at like the beginning and then coming in and out of commercial. And then they came back after we had moved into our new house to film like the reveal of the house that we had chosen. But they were a small and mighty crew. There was a director, a sound guy, and a camera guy. And the three of us kind of just like went all over Buffalo and looked at these houses. And then we filmed some exterior shots in some cool Buffalo locations. They filmed us like eating the classic Buffalo chicken wings. So we got our Buffalo wings, there on TV too. But it was a really cool experience. And I thought it was very funny how they kind of crafted the story from everything that we filmed.
Yeah. I guess you could just add that to, your little resume. Like, I was on an episode of House Hunters.
Yeah, it's
There you go.
actually, when I talked about like marketing, like using things that might be interesting to my clients, when I found out the air date of when our household House Hunters episode was going to be on, I actually sent an email to all of my clients' database and I said like, "Hey, really fun, exciting announcement, something different. I'm going to be on an episode of House Hunters. If you watch it, like this is the drinking game." Basically, I gave them like, "Oh, every time I say this, like that would be the drinking game." And I got so many emails back from clients saying like, "That's so cool. I watch that show all the time. I've always wanted to be on that show." So that was another cool way for me to share like a slice of my life with my clients.
Yeah. So when it comes to growing your business, how much would you say that social media can be like, um, well, first off, I know that everybody, they kind of have a similar viewpoint of social media, but a lot of them offer very different perspectives. So, what are some of the pros and cons of having a social media presence, especially if you're using it for your business? Because you got your website, you got the demos and all that stuff, but how about navigating through social media?
Yeah,
And
I think you have to decide what you want social media to be for you. For me, I've chosen to make social media just a slice of my life. So I share, little things about what I'm doing and I try to do it really authentically. I have someone who helps me create some content, but mostly that's on like the graphic design and like scheduling side of things. Like I don't have someone, here working with me like filming content or anything like that. I would not say that I use social media to generate business. I would say that I use it to continue business. So I'm not actively like, I don't actively use social media really to like find new clients or like ask people for work. But I like that people can find me and see that I'm like active, I'm knowledgeable, I understand the current platforms because all of the social media platforms that we use as users are also platforms that get used for advertising. So I like to show people that like I understand the current technologies, I understand how people are using social media to communicate. So I think having an active presence is really the way that I've approached it. I know some people do a lot of networking on Instagram and Twitter especially. I know the like anime and fandub and indie project communities are very active on Twitter as it comes to like sharing casting calls and communicating back and forth. I'm not super active in that space. Just personally, that's kind of like where mine ends. I really hang out mostly on Instagram and then do some sharing on LinkedIn. And I've connected with clients on LinkedIn. And if people come into my periphery and I don't have their email address and I want to try to reach out to them, I've used LinkedIn messaging as a way to try and potentially make new connections with people who could be my future clients. I think the only thing that I would say is social media is very public, right? So if you don't have your profile set to private, if you are expressing views on Twitter or Instagram or sharing, any kind of opinion that could be considered divisive, or maybe a lot of people don't agree with you or you hold a differing opinion, that could potentially negatively affect your business because people want to make sure that they're doing business with people who align with their whether it's their beliefs or their values or anything like that. So I would say, think about when you're putting stuff out in social media, think about the fact that it kind of lives there forever. Even if you delete things, people could have screenshot things. We see that all the time where people like our former president like will tweet something and then delete it, but other people have already screenshot it. So it kind of like lives on forever even if you delete things. So I would say just think about what you post and think about like, oh, if a new client was meeting you, would what you post, cause issues for them and their business or their values or things like that? And then maybe, save that for something else, or have a different anonymous persona where you share some of those views that isn't directly tied to, your business and your brand. But I kind of take just a middle of the road. I don't think there's much to get offended with as it pertains to like cats, spaghetti and meatballs, camping, and house hunters. I kind of take a more neutral approach to what I post.
Yeah. So what have you been picking up? Like what other I don't want to say hobbies because it's kind of like if you've been working as a full time, if you're doing this full time, it's like what is something else that you've been picking up? Because I know you've been doing the database, you've been doing a lot of this other stuff. So what else have you picked up ever? Like I guess
Yeah.
particularly like since the pandemic hit.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was in elementary, middle, and high school, I played the upright bass for 13 years. And then when I went to college, I kind of pursued theater more than music. So that was something that I wanted to get back into. So I actually purchased an instrument and started learning how to play again, which was great. It actually came back to me a little bit like riding a bike. I definitely need to work on building up my calluses on my fingers more. But yeah, there's a local string shop here in Buffalo, and I reached out and asked them if they had any upright basses for purchase. And he had a bass that is either Czech or German in origin. We're not exactly sure, but it was built in the 1830s. And it has a really, really beautiful sound. So it's kind of an antique instrument. So I bought that, and I've been kind of working on practicing that. And then the house that my husband and I bought last summer and moved into actually has 5 acres of land. So we have been working on learning how to garden a little bit more extensively. So we're putting in a big vegetable garden, and we also have on the property have some fruit trees. So we're learning all about how to help apple trees yield the most amount of apples and all sorts of stuff like that. I definitely do not have a green thumb, so I'm learning a lot. But that's another thing, like, getting out of the house, getting some sunshine, getting some vitamin D, all of that time that I invest into doing something other than work, I think makes me a better actor too.
Yep, 100% yes. And I know it's also different for everyone, but the struggles of working as a full-time voiceover artist, like the challenges and hurdles to overcome, like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep your voice healthy. I think that's definitely one thing. I have to really protect my voice. So if I'm going to do auditions or projects that are more vocally stressful, like if I'm auditioning for like, a game that includes like fight or combat and I have to do like yelling or death sounds, I'll try and save that for the end of the day so that my voice isn't scratchy for the rest of my sessions. I have some lower back issues, so I make sure to go to the chiropractor and get massages so that when I'm sitting in sessions for a long time, I can, keep from getting too cramped or anything like that. Um, Hydration is key, drinking a lot of water during the day. Avoiding foods that trigger things like acid reflux can be really helpful. So if you know that there are foods that maybe give you some of that like heartburn or acidity, like avoiding those things, especially on days when you have a lot of sessions, I think is really helpful. And then, yeah, just having a good support system. Like I have a group text of a couple of other female voice actors who are very similar to me. We work on the same kinds of jobs, and having like a great sounding board of people that you can reach out to for support or advice or to rant or anything like that, I think is really helpful. But yeah, I think every day just kind of like biting off what you can chew and, accomplishing that in a day and realizing that you won't be able to maybe get to everything. And prioritization, making sure you get the most important things done first and meet client deadlines and things like that. And then try to, fill in the admin work where you can. But not letting it get you overwhelmed. I think that's really important.
Yeah, but despite all of this, it just makes all of everything that you're doing, it just makes it all pay off at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a very rewarding career. I can't
Yeah.
believe that this is how I make my living, really, sitting in a padded box kind of talking to myself all day. But I've met so many cool people. I've gotten to talk to so many cool people around the world. And it's a really cool way. It's a really cool way to be a working actor in today's day and age.
Yeah. So feel free to promote just share anything that you're really the most excited about and any last words that you want to close out on. Yeah, just anything else that you want to say or share, just now's the time to do so.
Sure. I'm happy to connect with people on LinkedIn or Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Maria Pendo, Pendo. My website is voicebymaria.com. And if you are interested in the Disabled Voice Actors database, it's disabledvoiceactors.com.
Right on. And what's any last words that you want to say? Any last piece of advice that you want to close out on?
I would say my last piece of advice is if you haven't taken an improv class, take an improv class. If you want to be a voice actor, because it is a great skill to have. It'll be really useful for you in sessions, whether that's animation, video games, commercials. Being able to bring a little something extra to your sessions is always appreciated by clients. And yeah, have fun.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have anything else, Dad. I don't think I have any more that I can possibly say except, yeah. Um, just check out Maria's work. Just go to her website. If you want to use her for any VO work, definitely do so. Who knows what the future of the industry holds? What with the strikes and AI and all that other stuff? That's a whole separate can of worms altogether. So hopefully everything will turn out to be will change, for the positive. There will be a lot of positive changes, and it'll all turn out for the better in the future. So regardless, thank you all for watching, and thank you, Maria, for stopping by. It's been a huge pleasure of having you on, and yeah, feel free to check out more of my stuff on Spotify and everything else, social media. It'll be in the description by the time this goes up. But regardless, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for next time. This is Robert Jackson signing out. Peace.